very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's always a pleasure to rise in the House to speak on behalf of my constituents in Chilliwack. Hope I will be sharing my time with the member for Algonquin, Renfrew, Pembroke, who's approaching a very important anniversary, Mr. Speaker, nearly 25 years in the chamber coming up very soon. So congratulate her, one of my favourite members to hear speak, and I look forward to hearing her after my remarks are done. The Budget Implementation Act, which is what we're debating here today, implements a budget of broken promises and failures. This government has broken its own promises, not broken their own word that they gave to Canadians during an election just 6 months ago. They indicated, the Prime Minister said he would keep the deficit at $62 billion. Well, it's at $78 billion in this budget, so he broke that promise in less than 6 months. He promised to lower the debt to GDP ratio. He's raising it and causing inflation by failing to keep that promise. He promised to spend less, but we see in this budget that he's spending $90 billion more, and that equals $5,400 in more inflationary spending per household in the country. It's hard sometimes for Canadians to picture $90 billion, but they understand $5,400. And having that piled on top of in inflationary spending per household should worry all Canadians. He promised more investment, but the budget reveals that investment is collapsing. We've seen since this Prime Minister took office, over 48,000 fewer jobs in Canada and billions of dollars of investment have fled the country. So that is a record of failure, and I've just outlined a number of the broken promises. One of the things that the government likes to say, they're a government of slogans, and they are a government that likes to talk about that this is a generational budget, which is true if you're talking about the impact of the increased debt on future generations. And the key thing here, I think, for Canadians is to understand that because of this government's profligate spending and their disregard for taxpayer dollars, the government will now spend more on interest payments to bankers and bondholders than they will pay for health care transfers in this country. $55 billion. Again, a number that's hard for Canadians to grasp because most of them will never have $1 million, let alone $1 billion. But $55 billion given away, spent on interest charges that does not go to make life more affordable for Canadians, doesn't go to make their health care better. And at a time in my province, which is mismanaged by the government of British Columbia, the BC NDP. I'll give them that part of the mismanagement is with the provincial government there. But there are routine closures of emergency wards across the province where people for hundreds of kilometers can't access emergency medicine because they don't have adequate doctors, nurses, and facilities. So tell the people in my province of British Columbia that sending $55 billion to bankers and bondholders is better than spending more on health care, and you'll get them laughing in your face. They will not accept that this is a budget for a generational budget. They know that by sending that money that should be going to program spending and just frittering it away on bankers and bondholders is an inappropriate use of funds, and it will continue under this government, because they make Justin Trudeau look like a fiscal hawk. They have doubled his deficit. I remember it was right around this time last year where they didn't know who was going to present the economic update because the finance minister at the time resigned because she couldn't in good faith present a budget that presented a deficit that's about 50% lower than the one that was just introduced in this budget. The whole government was thrown into turmoil. They had to rip the page out of the economic update that had her name on it, and they just tabled it in the House without even giving a speech because she was so concerned that it limited the fiscal maneuverability of the government to be so irresponsible in the face of the economic changes that we keep hearing about. There needed to be fiscal responsibility, said the Liberal government 1 year ago. Fast forward to today, and the money taps are open. It's an open bar. And here we are sending money, again, $55 billion in interest payments alone. And that is something that should concern all Canadians. So should the figures on the national debt. This Prime Minister, which is a continuation of the previous Liberal government, will add $321.7 billion to the federal debt over the next 5 years. That's more than twice the $1.4 billion that Justin Trudeau would have added over the same time period. So these guys like to talk up this central banker's resume and what a genius he is financially. He's doubling the burden that is being left to our kids and grandkids to pay back. And they think it's such a masterstroke to just spend more money. Well, why hasn't anyone thought of that before, Mr. Speaker? Why don't we just spend more? Why not make it $600 billion? Why not make the deficit $150 billion? Because they know that it has to be paid back through taxes or program cuts. But they don't care. They're just trying to get through today. They just want to get through the next 4 years. They don't care about 40 years down the road when our children and grandchildren will pick up the tab. And that's why we called this a credit card budget. They're running up the credit card, and they're going to hand the bill to our kids and grandkids. Living large for today so that someone else can pay the bill tomorrow. It's irresponsible. We would never allow it to happen in our own families. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, I know you're a father, Mr. Speaker, can you imagine buying a Maserati and buying a huge mansion and then living large, taking 3 or 4 holidays a year, and then saying to the kids when they reach their working age, well, kids, Dad's had a good ride. You can pay the bill. Thanks for coming out. Of course, no responsible parent would do that. And no responsible government would look future generations in the eye and say, you're going to pay for my today. You're going to pay tomorrow for my today. It's irresponsible, and it isn't even delivering the results that they say it is. They talk about this major projects office. They keep announcing the winners and losers of the major projects. Instead of creating an environment where all of the major projects can be approved if they meet the regulations, they say, well, this project doesn't meet the regulations, but we're going to allow it to go through anyway. We're going to give an exemption to this project. Oh, and by the way, all of the projects we're announcing have been announced 6 or 8 years ago. Many of them are already being built. Look at us. What a fantastic number of projects. There was a mine that the minister, I don't even know what his portfolio is. It changes so often. I think it's trade relations with the U.S. right now. In 2018, he stood in the Maritimes and announced the Sisson mine would be underway, construction would be underway in 2018. And then he went out again this last couple of weeks and said, by the way, that mine that I announced in 2018, it's on this list. Aren't you proud of us? Look at us investing for future generations. It's a scam, Mr. Speaker. That's right. And this government fails to understand that what is needed is not for the government to pick winners and losers, but to create a winning environment for investment in the country. For everybody. For everyone to make their choices, to make their investment choices, to make those investments instead of the investment fleeing this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I have a minute left. So I want to talk briefly about more failures of this government. Since they ran for office, they said that they would get, the Prime Minister himself said, I'll have a deal with the United States by July. We're at the middle point of November, no deal, twice as high tariffs there. He said he'd get resolution with China. We still have tariffs on our canola. We still have tariffs on our seafood. We have new tariffs from India on our peas. And on our softwood lumber producers, the tariffs have increased threefold, 3 times, 45% for softwood lumber producers in my province of British Columbia. Hundreds of layoffs, thousands more hanging in the balance. They have failed to deliver for Canadians. They've broken their promises. We won't support this budget or the Implementation Act, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me talk a little bit about hypocrisy. You know, when the leader of the Conservative Party sat around the caucus, the Conservative government, back in the day, they actually had a deficit that was larger than, when you factor in inflation, than the deficit that is here today. That is the reality, Mr. Speaker, of the 2009 budget, where his leaders sat around it. Oh, how things have changed now that they're in opposition. The difference is that this government believes in Canadians and believes in investing in Canada's infrastructure and the people of Canada. Can the member indicate why it is that today's Conservative leader does not believe in supporting Canadians, does not believe in the need to expand trade opportunities for our businesses throughout the world?
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, yes, there was, after the world economic financial crisis, there was a big deficit. And Conservatives got the budget back to balance by 2011. That was our record. By 2015, we got it back to balance. That took a lot of hard work, Mr. Speaker, because we believed in the importance of leaving a balanced budget for future generations. We didn't want to increase the debt for them to pay it back. But I'm glad the member asked me a question. The last time he asked me a question in this House, I believe he was asking me why I didn't support a consumer carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, that's what he was on about. He asked that question to this side about 1,000 times. Swallowed himself whole. I'm glad he broke that promise. Maybe he would keep the promise to keep the budget deficit to $62 billion. Big challenge that would be, but he couldn't even do that. $78 billion. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. Député.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for the passionate speech. I very much agree with one thing he said. This government is being irresponsible with public money, leading to record deficits and more debt that will have to be paid off by future generations. It is irresponsible. It is reckless. The colleague was very right about that. There's another thing I agree with, even more specific. There is $100 billion in subsidies and subsidies and tax credits to big oil. My colleague is so passionate. It was such a passionate speech. So wouldn't my colleague agree with me that that $100 billion in tax credits to the oil and gas industry, isn't that the most telling, shining example of this government's lack of fiscal responsibility?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I think we do need to talk about the oil and gas sector and the benefits that it brings to the Canadian economy. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in revenues and royalties that go to pay for things like our healthcare system, like our education system, like the transfer payments that go across this country. And so I think we need to be talking up the oil and gas sector as a great benefit to Canada. We do it the best in the world. We have the best environmental regulations, we have the best workers, we have the best product, and if we did a better job of creating a level playing field so that everyone knew the rules and everyone could make the investments that weren't held up by this government, we could have even more benefit for Canadian families. We could have more benefit in terms of lower taxes, in terms of better services. So we on this side of the House will always support our oil and gas sector in this country.
That's right.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's truly amazing in terms of how the member reflects. He actually voted, or they campaigned also on the carbon tax. All he has to do is just reflect on Aaron O'Toole. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I'm wondering if he can provide a clear answer as to why it is that the Conservative Party of Canada does not support investing in Canadians, investing in Canada's infrastructure, and the promotion of external trade beyond the U.S. borders. Why is the Conservative Party not on board with those objectives?
The honourable member for Chilliwack Hope, about 30 seconds.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course, we support investments in the country, and that's why under a Conservative government, investments were up hundreds of billions of dollars, unlike under this Liberal government where hundreds of billions of dollars in the last 10 years have left the country. And certainly billions, tens of billions of dollars have fled the country since this Prime Minister took office. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll take no lessons from this member who's been a member of a party that's been for a carbon tax and against it in a matter of weeks. But we will certainly try to give him a lesson on being fiscally responsible. He hasn't learned it yet.